pitch blockchain to the CEO of Google, then let's talk about how to attack this problem, right? What kind of structure would you use for this? And so, I'm going to throw some thoughts out there, and maybe together we can put a structure. So the first thing that I would do is to, go back and say, okay, sure. Let me think about. Let me first make sure that my understanding of telling you my understanding of blockchain and what it does. Okay, so what does blockchain do, and what problem does it solve? Then the next thing that I would do is to look at, okay, so who are the users of blockchain, and what do these users want to achieve? The third one would be, how can Google leverage blockchain? It could be within their current products or not. And I will go and analyze then, what are the products that could leverage blockchain based on what blockchain provides. And then I will go and look at who is the competition currently, who are competitors that are using blockchain that actually could threaten some of Google products. And then I will go into the idea part, which is, okay, so now that we have an idea of how blockchain works, the benefits of blockchain, who are the users, how they benefit, or what benefits it provides, then we can go into thinking about, okay, we can look at Google products and see which ones benefit, and see a way to use blockchain, and also thinking about other new products, if that is possible. So, how does this structure sound to you?
Sounds good. Very thorough.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
So let's write it down, right? So the first thing I would say is like, okay, so the question, which is, how would you pitch blockchain to Google CEO? That's the main question. And so I will start, and actually one piece that I missed is to ask clarifying questions, right? So, because the question here is, Google has different products on the consumer side and on the enterprise side. And the question would be, is this for the consumer, like an application that Google would own? Or is it more on the enterprise side, which is Google, having technology that enables third party to develop blockchain applications, right? So that's one thing that I would ask first. Then the other one is, okay, what is blockchain? And what it does? Or what, actually a better question is, what problem does it solve? Then who could be the users? What is their goal or what they want? And then here, okay, what are Google products that can leverage blockchain? Then talk about competition in this space. And third and sixth would be, okay, some ideas for blockchain-based products. Or actually, it could be also not only products, but it could be new revenue models too. Okay, Am I missing something? I think this is a good start, I think. All right. So first thing is the clarifying questions, right? Is this consumer or enterprise? And have you guys read a little bit about the state of blockchain in these two industries? No? So let me tell you a little bit. So on the consumer space, there are a lot of startups that are building applications, okay? And on the enterprise space, you have the big cloud players, right? You have Amazon, AWS, you have Google, you have Google Cloud is doing. Are doing pilots, okay, so to speak. They're already doing sort of some pilots, some prototypes, doing partnerships, okay, with third-party companies or developers to see what kinds of use cases businesses want. Okay, so they're still not changing their platform completely, but they're doing some small tests, right? Google has like 140 acquisitions partnerships, funding. So it has funded 140 companies, startups that it has funded. Just in 2017, that's quite a bit, right? But it hasn't committed to any pilots yet. It's interesting. And then you have IBM, which they're more into, using I'm not so quite certain what they're doing, but you know that IBM doesn't have a true cloud platform, right? I mean, they have the IoT and all this stuff, but I think that enterprises, it's not very integrated, right? So they're doing their own pilots, but I don't think that they have sort of that importance to enterprises like these three guys in small businesses. In any case, that's the side of the enterprise. But I think that for this question, they're likely to ask you, okay, what kind of applications do you think Google can do on the consumer space rather than on the enterprise space? What they can do in enterprise. So that's why I was thinking, let's focus on the consumer side of things. Okay. And so once that clarification is done, then let's talk about blockchain and what it does. So anybody wants to give a shot at explaining what it does?
I can go ahead. I'll try. So yeah. Blockchain is a chain of blocks, and every block, when a new block is created, the previous block knows what's the next block in line. And once the block is created, it cannot be altered or changed or updated. And everybody can see the block, but not the contents of the block. That way, only you can see the contents of your own block. Nobody knows who you are or what you're doing with your block, but they know what your block is from a outsider perspective, and they know how many subsequent consequential blocks there are. That way, every time there is a new block created, you are appending to the list of blocks, and the list of the series of blocks is an open ledger. Anybody can look at it, and anybody who owns a block can look at the entire series of blocks. this is secure it is sort of a decentralized power. That way everybody owns it. At the same time, nobody owns it. So
Okay.
that's my perspective of block. And one of the popular use cases is the cryptocurrency. I'm sure everybody would have heard of Bitcoin, and that is one of the popular implementations of this technology or this concept.
Yep. So you brought, certain characteristics that blockchain has. Now let's bring it up a notch at a higher level. And Padma, especially in these interviews, you want to bring it to a level where you provide a higher level picture, right? And
Okay.
so business angle to it, right?
Yeah.
So, but with a little bit of technological explanation, but don't go too deep, right? Because then you miss the whole picture. So, one of I think that a good way to explain it, and I've seen it because I've read a lot about this, is, and that makes sense to me. It's a distributed database. You can think of it as a database that is distributed.
Yes. Yes.
In running on millions of nodes. Okay. And what did these nodes do? Well, they all have a copy of a chain of transactions. Okay. And this could be transactions, or it could be could be contracts, or whatever that today you consider a transaction or an exchange in value. Okay, so it keeps a chain of information about these transactions and contents. Okay, and they basically ensure the incorruptibility of transactions through cryptographic signatures. Okay, and so they keep a copy. They keep a copy of ledger on every single node of every transaction that occurred since zero time, and these transactions cannot be corrupted. They cannot be changed. They're unchangeable. And because they have a way to make sure that they check the signatures from node to node so that it's not being corrupted, right? And, this happens because this is possible because they maintain basically signatures are linked to previous, so the signature of a block or a transaction. So signature of a transaction, which is called a transaction block, is linked to the signature of the previous transaction, the previous block, excuse me. And so what this means is that, if you have, you have your network of nodes, right? And each of them keeps this ledger of blocks, right? And they'll keep exactly the same copy, okay, of these things. Then this block here, okay, has a signature, which is the hash. It's a hash of the content of this block, and basically the hash of the previous block, right? So because of these links between block to block, if somebody changes something on this block, they will need to change the signatures of the other ones, and that's practically impossible. So that's the idea. It's basically a distributed database running on millions of nodes that keep a ledger of transactions on every single node that is uncorruptible. because they have this very high cryptographic signature protocol. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Okay. And one more thing I'd like to add to that is anybody who wants to make an update has to be approved by at least one person in the list, so that it gets certified in the ledger. Any new transaction should be approved by
exactly.
Somebody in the group. Yeah.
Actually, every transaction is approved by all the nodes.
All the nodes, sorry, yeah.
And that's why it's so powerfully protected. Okay.
So it cannot be modified. That's the logic.
Yeah, it cannot be modified.
So if I find any error, what do I do?
So if that is a different question, right? So if let's say that you're sending Bitcoins to somebody, right? And you made an error.
Mm-hmm.
That's your error, right?
Yeah.
Not the error of the system, right? It's not up to the system to figure out whether you made a mistake in sending money, right? So that's but that's a good point, right? What if somebody signs a contract and then they change their mind? Okay, but that's a different issue. So the idea here is like, why is this important, right? What's the benefit of all this? Well, if you think about how the world works today, right, in terms of how we buy stuff, everything is based on trust, right? The thing is that here, you don't have a middleman. Okay, what are the implications here? There's no middle authority approving contracts or transactions, right? So, for example, Western Union, right? You go to Western Union to send money to a different country. There's the middleman, and they charge you like 30%. And you do that because you have trust, right? Trust that they are going to deliver it to the right person and all the stuff, right? But in this system, for example, because it's impossible for the transaction to be changed at all, is much more trustworthy than Western Union, because in Western Union you can have a corrupt person. These are machines, right? So it gets rid of the middle authority, which means lower costs for everything that you can imagine, right? I mean, I just gave you the remittance example, but it could be anything that requires a third party to put their signature and say, yeah, this works. Like, for example, escrows, right, for your house. You don't need now to pay somebody to put the escrow because you can trust the system. And so, no middle authority, that lower costs, right, for everybody, right? There is no, it's decentralized. So nobody owns or manage, right? Manage this system. And then it's completely transparent, which means you can go into this system and check what is happening to the transaction, right? So imagine that you want to, an application, like you want to track what is happening with, I worry about my food. So I want to know where it comes from, right? So if there was a system like this, which track everything that is being done to my tomato that I'm eating, that would be really good for somebody that wants to pay top dollar for eating right, something that is really organic, right? Like, I'm being sold organic stuff at Whole Foods, but do I really trust that it's organic? Not sure, right? But with this system, for example, if there's a way to enter what's the journey of the product through, from the farm till it gets to Whole Foods, then I'm able to see what happened to it. So it's completely transparent, that gives you more information. And what else? It eliminates fraud. Because nobody can change the content of these transactions or contracts. All right. So obviously this is a great platform for anything that requires transferring value from one's hand to another, or selling something, or renting something, or anything, right? It's like it's perfect for a two-sided market, right? When there's a seller and there's a buyer. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, hello?
Yeah, it could also, I mean, I've heard that they're trying to use blockchain technology in medical records. I don't really understand how it actually works, but I've heard about certain companies who are trying to introduce blockchain into medical records.
Yeah, I mean, and you're quite right. I mean, there's no need really for blockchain for that, but some companies are using blockchain, and I guess it's for providing that trust that your medical records are not going to be changed, or giving you information about how your medical records are being used. It could, because some people, for example, in England, there's a pilot with Google DeepMind Health where they are providing information as to whether your medical records are being used for research or they are actually being used for actual care.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're using it that way too. And there are myriads of applications for this, right?
Yes.
But I mean, there are applications that, and that's why I wanted to have this session to also think about applications that, maybe nobody has thought about. So let's look at, who are the users and who are the providers of this? Who can, what do they want, right? All right. Who could be the users of a blockchain type of system, right? Well, I think you have, on the one side, you have the provider of the blockchain system, and then you have the client, right, or user, client or consumer. So, let's start with the consumer. From the consumer, I think there's a lot of benefit here, which is, lower costs of transactions, for example, because now you don't have a middleman, right? So now I don't have to pay $30 when I send $100 to Peru. The $100 can just go, right? Now there's some transaction fee that goes into the computers that handle your transaction within the network, but that is just very small, okay? But I just wanted to let you know. Lower cost of transaction, so that's pretty good, right? Then you really get higher assurance that there would be no monkey business, assurance of no fraud. Then you can also track details of what happened to your transaction. I mean, this would be great for, UPS or, all these packages, right? I mean, now you can track, but I think with this, you can even track better. And then, get detailed accountability, really. Of how your transaction is changing hands. For example, one idea is, and I don't know how familiar you are with digital marketing, but in digital marketing, when you advertise as an advertiser, there are a chain of technologies that go from the point when you try to advertise till it goes to the publisher. And all these technologies, basically, if it costs you $1 to advertise, all these middle technologies or middle providers of technologies are taking about 50% of that, right? So you can cut all of those people and go directly to the publisher if this kind of system existed, for example. And there's a business doing that called Torio. But yeah, so any other benefits that you guys can see? How about the provider? So what does the provider get? Well, they can, providers of businesses, they can buy, I would say new products by cutting middlemen. Provide higher value to the customer, so they can get more of that margin. What else? And provide higher security to the client, more value. So I think that for the providers, it's about replacing what exists today with this technology, which is going to cut costs for the user, and they can get a lot more for that margin now than by cutting the middleman. So so we have these two users. So let's think about now about Google products. And if you think about the Google products on the consumer side that are, let me ask you this question: which Google products, what kinds of Google products would be amenable to use blockchain? And by that I mean, what products will be amenable to provide sort of lower cost on transactions by using, a blockchain, higher assurances to the user?
Google Pay.
Hmm?
Google Pay. Google has this paying service.
Yeah, Google Pay. Okay.
Oh, the ads transactions.
Ads transaction, I would say, everything that has to do with AdWords, AdSense, in DoubleClick. What else?
Gmail?
Which one?
Gmail?
Gmail, in what way, Amy?
In the sense that it could help improve security and prevent like email hacks.
Mm-hmm. Gmail. So, like, yeah, I guess you can have a system where Gmail works and you send something, right?
Yeah.
But maybe the system can have sort of like an identity security type of system.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, the value that's being exchanged is information, right? It's not necessarily like a currency value, but it's information that's valuable.
Okay, we can get into more details, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yep.
So exchange of information. Okay. What else?
What about YouTube copyright tracking? Like, you post a video and you will be able to track it from the original content creator to redistributors and to end users.
That's right. That's a good example. What else?
Coming from an enterprise background, Google Cloud, could it offer some small business solutions similar to how AWS is entering blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I didn't want to go into the enterprise yet.
Got it.
because that is more like a platform play.
Sure.
And so we can get into the technology of it, but at this point, I think it will take more analysis into the competitive space. So I wanted to avoid that for now. Okay, what else? They have, let me look at the applications that they have here. So they have search. How about search? Do you think it can be used there? Yeah.
So how can we use it in search?
That's what I'm thinking. So what happens with search? With search, you enter a text and it's searching on websites, and it's basically part of advertising, right? Yeah,
I think you can go back to what Amy said, where it's all about trust, information, and security and information. Because at the end of the day, when you do go through a search, someone is also providing the information. So how do we validate the quality of that information? So it could be used in that sense.
Maybe we can track the ranking of search. What is that? How they do the page rank. They have an algorithm based on the popularity. You don't want anyone to hack it.
Or how do you trust? You know, like we don't know what Google does, right?
Yeah, people can guess. They were saying they're
that nobody knows, right? So maybe this can add some transparency to it, you know? I think we can discuss later on whether this is good for Google, but that's another story. What else? How about Google Maps? What do you think? Is there something there? You know, so what happens with Google Maps? People can enter anything about a business there, right? Like their experience on any business, right?
Yep.
So I wonder, if there's an exchange there. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. How about, let's say,
I was just thinking about Google transactions. So things like Google Flight, at some point they went into car comparison and just the sales that occur on Google platform. That could be an avenue that could be, that's an opportunity where blockchain can be.
Which product? Sorry.
Google Flight. I know they're testing on that now.
Google Flight.
Yeah.
It's for what is it?
So for plane tickets, travel, holidays, stuff like that.
Tickets, okay. Let's
on the same line, I think the Google Shopping is also one, and then the Express, Shopping Express.
Yeah. Express. Okay.
Google Photos.
Google Photos, yeah. Google Assets. How about Google Home? you know, they are certainly collecting your information at home, right? You're talking all the stuff, right? You may not want this to be open to the world, right? So maybe they allow that possibility where you decide what it's open to the world or not. You know, sort of like, so Google Home, like, what do we call this?
Google Assistants, maybe?
No. I mean, what I'm saying is that a new application that we call it, you know, like protect your data, you know, protect your personal disclosure, you know, of your data. Or you can also sell it, right? But maybe you can sell just bits of it, of your data that they're collecting.
Just to add, I was gonna say Google Docs.
Google Docs, yeah. All right. Okay. So we have all these applications that we have for Google products. You know, let's pick some here, and we can think about a solution, okay, that uses blockchain just to practice. Okay, what is the vote? People, one by one, tell me which one you want to handle, you want to think about. Amy?
Yeah, I can do Google Docs.
Google Docs, we have one. How about Angela?
I would do YouTube. I like it.
How about Arpana? I don't know if you have the microphone on, Arpana.
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Yeah. Yeah, Google Docs seems good.
Google Docs. Umi?
I can take Google Flight or
Google Flight. Okay. Padma?
Yeah, I can. So, are we picking each topic separately? Or are we gonna tackle all of them together? I didn't get the question right. Sorry.
Oh, which? Let's tackle just one application, just to think about how blockchain could be used.
Whatever is the popular one, I really don't have a preference. I'll just go with whatever the majority goes with. I don't really have any preference. For now, I can say Google Docs.
Google Docs. Tori?
Yeah, there's no point now. It's winner is there.
Hey, I'm still voting.
You go first.
Google Docs?
You're on spot.
Okay.
Which one? Sorry, any preference?
Yeah, personally, I would go with AdWords because that's the #1 money generating engine, but there's no point now.
Okay, so let's go with Google Docs, and then we can do AdWords maybe some more time. But let's think about Google Docs. All right, so I guess let's think about what is the use cases for Google Docs that can make use of that in a situation where the user will require trust, maybe track or transparency about the doc, what happened to the document, about who, maybe you should put in, who saw the document, What happened to it? Changes. Basically, transparency about the life of the document. Okay, so maybe there is something that is completely private. Okay, so what else? What are situations?
I would say version history.
Version history, okay, versioning. What else?
I'm not too sure if this is like directly related, but one of the kind of the big decision-making factors on going with Google Docs versus something else for business buyers, and again, I know we're talking about consumers, is having an on-prem versus complete cloud solutions. I don't know if this can be circumvented using blockchain.
That's a, but I think that would be, if that, I mean, Arpan, are you thinking that some companies just want to have a private version of Google Docs, whereas other companies,
which is on the premise, but then it's also very expensive and time consuming to do that.
Actually, this is a great example to move people from private to Google Cloud. It's high trust, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be a good example for businesses. I mean, a good application for businesses, So maybe here's like business documents in the cloud, in public cloud, because of higher trust. What else? So right now, when you guys use Google Docs in your businesses, in your work or whatever, are there any concerns? For example, your companies, do they use Google Cloud or not?
It's prohibited. It's not allowed for our company, and the big reason is security.
Gotcha.
Competitors are like SharePoint, and again, going back to the whole having a private versus public.
Yeah, I agree with that. And number one priority for the enterprise is they need to have a manageability from IT admin. They don't want anyone to do anything out of domain.
So I think that blockchain would be perfect for this. Because, it is practically impossible for anybody to handle those documents that doesn't have an access control. Very good. What else? What else about documentation in a business scenario that is important to maintain? I mean, this is a good point. Like if Google wants to move, companies from being in the private cloud to public cloud, then they need to provide these services that that blockchain provides, which is manageability, security. What else do companies worry about?
Forwarding of the documents, the third party who is not allowed to see it.
Forwarding? No. I would say, this is sort of like access control. What else do people worry about?
I think there's also like a performance benefit to it, right? Like if you have multiple copies of a record out there, if one node fails, you have a backup.
Performance. Multiple copies. Exactly. What else?
Audit.
Audit process. How about these documents? Do they, are there some documents that go from machine to machine? You know, like ERP types of documents. I don't have knowledge of that, but you know, like documents that are right now in the private cloud, right? But you know, you can go to the public cloud. But what are the kinds of what are the kinds of processes that they go through? I'm not quite sure, but
so an example, maybe I'm trying to think if this is answering your question, but often in terms of access control sharing, and for a tech company, they publish all sorts of sales and tech materials internally, and there's a version of that with minor changes that's published to their sales partners. So there are multiple copies of similar document with some content changing. So yes, some of it needs to be in public, and some of it needs to be in private, only shared with the sales partners.
Gotcha. And I think that would be part of the access control, like
Probably.
Okay, our partners can only see these documents, this version, you know, and that's what we're talking about versioning too. Good. I mean, I think this is good.
Co-editing and merge. I don't know whether it applies.
Co-editing, yes.
Productivity kind of thing.
Co-editing, collaboration, right? Okay. So basically, what I'm thinking is that what you know, and so let's think about the solution and what is needed to provide all these capabilities, right? So you have all these nodes, right? You're going to put a document in this public cloud. You get the blockchain to basically, you know, hash the document, you know, put it in the blockchain, pass it to all the nodes. But this layer, or for example, manageability. Let's talk about versioning first, I guess. So in versioning, so how does versioning work today? In the private cloud, you just keep different versions, right, of these documents, and people. I think that you can provide access control to people to look at it, right? But there's no way. You know, versioning today, do they provide a way to tell you who changed what? I guess they do, right, today?
Yeah, I think it's more based on timestamps. I'm not sure about if they make it visible as far as like who changed it.
Yeah, I think in SharePoint, you have different author. If you co-editing a deck, you can see who did what.
Okay. So here, what blockchain can do is blockchain can provide sort of like identity enable or identity enable. What I'm trying to say is like you can. So in your blockchain, you can have like an identity system, which basically only allows people that are employees, right, to that have access to the document to be able to change it. So identity enable documents, maybe. Do you know what I'm saying?
Could you explain that, Milena? Identity enable.
Well, maybe that's not a difference. So today, so today people give access to people based on email, right? To their documents. So as long as somebody has the email of the person, they can go change the document. Right?
Yeah. Actually, now that I'm thinking, since you brought it up, isn't blockchain one way? And the whole point of Google Docs is sort of like collaboration and co-editing. So would that actually impact performance and even like raise a question mark on the feasibility? I don't know if I'm understanding blockchain correctly, but that's what I thought.
So, right. So I would imagine, so what happens is that in blockchain, you have a document, right? Then you hash it and then you put it in the blockchain. Okay, so what happens when you want to update the document? That's what you're asking, right? Then you're changing the document.
Then you're changing, yeah. It's, the point that you were explaining earlier where, editing a chain, it goes back to changing other things in the node.
Right, that's a very good point.
I think one thing we can do is log all the actions that taken on the certain document.
Right.
Those logs, who did what, pretty much just like a forensic thing. You can go back if anyone wants to.
Yeah. So instead of changing, okay, but so what Tori was saying is like, or was it Arpana, that the blockchain usage is really not amenable to the collaborative part, right? Because people are changing the document, and that's what you expect.
Yeah, that's Arpana. Yep.
It's only for cases where you want to protect the unchangeability of the document, right? Now, in terms of the logs and tracking how the document has changed, right? Yeah, you can keep track of that, right? And is there any that you can keep track of that to maybe catch something that shouldn't have happened? Like, for example, I got, Amy's email in her work, and I just went and changed it, right? Changed the document. But if you keep a log of all the changes, and maybe I went and deleted the log, right? But if you keep the log of changes in the network, in blockchain network, then even if I took Amy's email and I went and changed the log on her machine on some server, that won't help because there's a copy of all of the log on every machine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one idea of protection, right? Against possible changes. Let's talk about, performance of multiple copies. Well, that's sort of like a given, right? So, but you can have that today, right, without blockchain, right? You have that document caching in a lot of machines. Amy, were you thinking about something different?
No, I was just going off the fact that there's multiple copies out there, so it's less liable, I guess, to system failures.
Right, but you can do that without blockchain.
Right.
Right. So that doesn't take advantage of the blockchain properties. The audit process, somebody mentioned this. What kinds of situations would require audit? Like,
for example, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley audit, internal financial record need to be handled properly. And or HIPAA is in healthcare, and consumer payment card, CPI compliance.
Yeah, that definitely, and the audits can happen, actually super fast. In fact, it can happen every 10 minutes. So that's a very good application. All right, so we say co-editing. We don't understand enough yet to understand how collaboration can work with blockchain. At least I don't. But we have the logging of changes, the audit of financial documents. What else?
Hey, Melania. I know you were talking about identity enablement. Why was that dropped from the solutions?
Oh, I was trying to think about, the identity issues. So let's say that somebody's stealing your identity today. What does that mean, right? That means that they are using your identity, social security number, etc., to do certain things. Can blockchain capture that? Not sure it can do. But let's think about passwords, for example.
Right.
So now we have like gazillions passwords everywhere. What if you have your passwords in the blockchain?
Right.
And somebody had to want to change it, right? So that and it's not you. That would be a problem. But can this blockchain detect that? If somebody wants to change your password.
Sorry, if we go back, because my understanding of blockchain is, when it comes to identity, it learns a lot about you that is virtually impossible for someone else to actually replicate that information. And it takes a lot for you to go through every node for you to actually say, I want to change anything about this person. So it's learned who you are, that someone else can actually replicate that information to steal your identity. So it might actually be a good idea.
Yeah. So you're saying, identity management. Okay, but I don't know how related this is to docs. But the identity management would be basically based on your history of, and it could be, and I think, Bumi, are you saying, your history of events? Maybe I went to buy this, I travel here, I travel there.
Exactly. So almost like with cryptocurrency right now, it knows that this is a person that owns this amount because of previous event. You've done this, and that. So it's sort of, yeah. So I guess I don't know how it relates to Google Docs, to be fair.
Yeah. I'm trying to see, but I think that's a good example of identity management, which could be much more robust than today, right?
Yeah.
So, like if you go and, for example, I don't know if it happens to you guys, but when I go to a different country, I have to call my bank and tell them I'm using this credit card, and all the stuff. Can this make that better, right?
I guess in terms of identity, I was thinking along the lines of how, every new user on any document, I guess, needs to go through approvals of existing users, where any change made to the documents needs to be approved. So for me, it's a lot more about access, right, to the document based on the approval of your credentials or the approvals of the changes that you're trying to make.
Going through approval. I mean, I guess this could be something that would be for really documents that require high for your eyes only, type of things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be quite annoying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would. I was also thinking about certain industries like healthcare or finance, especially banks, because I know banks has like really high compliance standards.
Yeah.
It could also be very useful for things like data, government data and stuff like that, where information shouldn't be changed. We need it to be consistent, and we need it to be, consistent is what I was going for. Yeah, that's it.
Government documents. Okay. So I think I myself need to understand a little bit more about blockchain to understand the actual effectiveness, of the technology and all of this. But this seems to be along the lines of trust, security that we were talking about. So the next thing would be like, okay, so we just look at one application, right? And you're going to pitch this, and you say, what, documents is basically an incredible. It's everybody writes documents, and the pitch would be like, today there's a problem with documents in the sense that companies, enterprises, government, they don't trust, they don't have good trust on the security of their documents, and so that's why they keep it in private machines, in private clouds. But once we provide a robust, right, secure, blockchain-based document cloud that provides, very applications for auditing the documents, really quickly, low cost, logging changes in the logs that actually check themselves to see if there were changes, as well as validating who the users are and all these benefits. I think that companies, enterprises that are still using private clouds will move their documents to the public cloud if the cost is going to be like so much less, right? What do you think of this pitch?
Yeah, I think it could work for sure.
And we'll just have to put numbers in this, right? So we can estimate, for example, how many companies that currently have private cloud documents, how much money they spend on audits and on maintaining the servers, whatever, and then the reduction in cost that they will have, and make an estimate, of how many of them will transfer to Google Cloud. All right, I think we should go deeper into this, understand the technology even better, and maybe investigate. I'm sure there are startups working on this today, on documents. So maybe something for you guys to do, and maybe we can talk about this next time, is to actually look at this type of application, right? How is blockchain being used to secure documents? So what do you think about the structure? Do you think this is a good structure? How do you feel about this blockchain technology? Do you think that you can talk about it?
I think I can talk about it, but I'll probably focus on Google Pay, just because there's already cryptocurrency in that way. There are already similarities. It gives you an opportunity to speak more and be more confident about what you're speaking about. Right. And then you can talk about competitors as well, and instead of round up.
Right.
But this has been very helpful. I don't think I have added much information about BC before until now. So yeah.
Yeah, and for you guys that want to just try it, there are out there, some articles about how to build your own blockchain, which I'm doing myself. It's very simple, actually. It's not very difficult. I'm doing it in Python and Flask. But if you want to, I think, understand it better and deeper, probably just spending a few hours building your own blockchain will bring up great benefits. All right. That's it for now.
All right. Thanks, Milena.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.